Hey everybody, this is Fernando from the Rollback Podcast, and you know what day it is? It is Wednesday. And like every Wednesday, we are going to be taking a look at movies that we might have missed in the past, or movies that we remember, and just need a little refresher course and just talk about them just a little bit, come on, just a little bit, let's just talk about it a little bit. Alright, and for this Wednesday Rewind, keeping up with the theme of Halloween, we are going to be checking out one of my childhood favorite movies, 13 Ghosts. Now, when I saw this movie, I had far more fond memories. I remember it being absolutely terrifying as a kid. We would watch it with my cousins from Chicago, and they would drive down in this van with a VCR TV built in. So that's how we would watch it. Rewatching it brought a lot of old memories back, and I remember the movie and doing some background information on the movie itself. I was pretty blown away as to what was going on in this movie. So sit back, relax, and enjoy me ranting about a movie for 20 or so minutes. Let's do this. There are ghosts in this basement. This basement. Of course this basement. What is it with you people? If it was the basement next door, I wouldn't give a shit, would I? And that's probably going to be one of my favorite quotes from this movie, along with, "Promise me I can rely on you to get me out of this place alive. I guarantee nothing." This fucking movie, 13 Ghosts, is so weird to look back on it now. But not weird in a bad way, weird in a good way. Looking back on this movie now, I have fond memories of it. I grew up with it. Like a lot of these random horror movies, it's funny how you remember them and how they are when you rewatch them. And this movie was completely different as a kid. I guess because I never paid attention to the story as a kid. And holy shit, like the story is... So, I don't want to rub anyone the wrong way. Horror movies are these types of movies where you can either go the real artsy route, and that's a movie like Hereditary, Midsummer, The Lodge, shit like that. Boring movies, if you will. Or you can go not so boring movies, entertainment movies. You get The Conjuring out of that, you get Saw, you get all these movies like that. And then you have this tiny little subgenre where it's very ridiculous movies, but they're fun. And I would definitely put this movie in that category. So this movie follows a family who just lost their matriarch, the mother, and they just find out that a long-lost uncle of the father is leaving him a glass house to live in with his family. And when he arrives to the house, next thing you know, he finds out that this house is infested with ghosts. 13, to be exact. Well, 12, and then 13 at the very end. But yes, this house is infested with ghosts. So this movie's starring, it has a pretty good, decent cast. It has a pre-monk Tony Shalhoub. It has Embeth Davis, who plays the nanny, who's fucking hilarious in this movie. Like, she is so goddamn funny. I can't believe it. And then next thing you know, you have a pre-Scooby-Doo, post-Scream, Matthew Lillard. So he's not infested with the stereotype of Shaggy at this point. You have a post-American Pie 1 and 2, post-Scary Movie Shannon Elizabeth. Now that one threw me for a fucking loop. Because, I remember Shannon Elizabeth from American Pie. You know, like every kid who saw American Pie. And in this movie, so I thought this movie was made like maybe 97, 98. And then blew my fucking mind when it turned out that it was made in 2001. So that, right out the gate, blew my mind. Secondly, this movie has Shannon Elizabeth post American Pie. And I don't know if you remember Shannon Elizabeth in American Pie, but she's dropped dead gorgeous. Like, they really, like, up the factor to make her extremely beautiful, the girl that all guys want. And in this movie, she looks normal. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just, she just looks normal, like a normal teenage girl. She's not over-sexualized or anything like that. Like, she just looks straight up normal. And it's so baffling to me, especially knowing her filmography before this movie. And apparently this is the first movie that had 3 people of Arabian descent in lead roles. Yeah, I bet you didn't know that, Tony Shalhoub, F. Murray Abraham, and Shannon Elizabeth. So yeah, that's a little fun fact for you. So this movie is a remake, which I did not know prior to watching this movie as a kid. I did not know it was a remake of the 1960 film, 13 Ghosts, same name, shocker. And this movie, from what I read, it does not follow the same path as the original movie. But for me, I mean, I necessarily don't mind when a remake goes off the written path. So as long as it works for the movie that you're watching, it's perfectly fine with me. For me, the most shocking thing about this movie is that it was produced by Robert Zemeckis, and for those of you wondering who Robert Zemeckis is, think Back to the Future, because he directed all those movies. He directed Forrest Gump, he directed Castaway. The guy's a big deal. And it was also written, one of the writers was James Gunn. And for those of you wondering who James Gunn is, it is the director of movies like Slither, Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and Volume 2. So, I mean, he's also a pretty big deal in this movie. So yeah, to see that these 2 big names were attached to this movie, it's kind of funny. Along with this pretty good cast. I mean, it's funny that they caught these cast members kind of like in this weird moment of their careers, like Shannon Elizabeth coming off of American Pie 1 and 2, and then Tony Shalhoub pre-Monk, which was his apex. That's his tippy top. A Monk is his tippy top because it was a very long running show. I think it ran for like 8 seasons. And then you have Matthew Lillard, who's pretty, I didn't want to say his most notable role is Shaggy. I want to say that that's more than likely his most notable thing that he's done. Not saying that Scream wasn't one of his most notable roles, because it was. I love him in that role. But I feel like his star power really started to rise when he did Shaggy, because it's a kid's movie. But yes, enough with the cast. Let's start talking about the movie real quick. So this movie, it centers around these 12 ghosts, 13 in total, but the ones that you really see are the 12. So let's just bang those out real quick. The ghosts go as followed. The firstborn son, a ghost of a little bratty boy named Billy Michaels, who loved to pretend to be a cowboy. One day, another little kid challenged Billy to a duel, but Billy's cap gun was no match for that boy's real steel-tipped arrow that Billy's ghost still carries. Unlike most of the ghosts, this one is a mild threat, never attacking anyone and just saying, "I want to play." Second, the torso. Jimmy the Gambler Gambino was a gambler in the early 1900s who caught the attention of the mafia. After he lost a boxing bet and didn't have the money to pay up, the mafia cut him into pieces and wrapped him in cellophane, dumping the remains in the ocean. His ghost appears as a torso with a severed head nearby, and is more of a neutral spirit than actively hostile. The Bound Woman. Susan LeGros was the richest girl in town and was very popular. Her one flaw was the way she toyed with boys and men. During her senior prom night, she was killed by a jilted ex named Chet Walters, a star quarterback, after catching her cheating with another guy. Her ghost lures Bobby into the dangerous basement and still shows in her prom attire, bound, ropes holding her arms. The fourth ghost is the withered lover. Jean Kritikos was a happy and devoted wife and mother. She died as a result of the fire injuries at St. Luke's Hospital half a year before the events of the film began. Unlike most of the ghosts, she is not dangerous. She is benevolent. The Torn Prince. Royce Clayton was a gifted and famous teenage baseball player in the 1940s and 50s, who caught the eye of colleges around USA thanks to his challenger, a greaser who set him up. Royce died in an accident caused by cut brake lines. His remains are still buried at the baseball diamond, and his ghost carries his baseball bat. The Angry Princess. Dana Newman was a beautiful but abused lady who lived in the later 1900s. She had plastic surgeries to alter her perceived flaws, and after a botched experiment that mutilated her eye, she brutally killed herself in a bathtub at the clinic. The Pilgrimess. Isabella Smith came to North America as a colonist in order to find a new life after being orphaned in England. The tight-knit community ostracized and ignored her and used her as a scapegoat, being accused of witchcraft when crops and animals mysteriously died. She denied the accusations but was trapped in a burning barn and managed to escape unharmed. That sealed her fate. The Great Child. Harold Shelburne was a special needs man who never outgrew diapers and had to be spoon-fed by his mother, the Dire Mother. The Hammer. A happy and honest family man, blacksmith George Markley, was falsely accused of stealing by a higher-up named Nathan and threatened with exile from Old Western Town. George refused to leave, and his family was lynched by Nathan and his band of thugs while walking home from town that day. Seeking justice in the corrupt town, George took his blacksmith's hammer and killed those responsible. But he was later killed and driven road spikes through his body. The Jackal. Born to a prostitute, Ryan Coon developed a sick appetite for women, attacking and raping strays and prostitutes. In the night, he voluntarily went to an institute for treatment to cure his problem, but the medical practices made him much worse, causing him to go completely insane after years of solitary confinement, having his head locked in a cage after breaking out of the straitjacket, and developing a hatred for humanity. When the asylum burnt down, he chose to stay behind and perish in the fire. The Juggernaut. Horace Beecher Mahoney was born very disfigured and was an outcast in his entire life. He was raised by his father, and when his father died, he became crushed. Horace went insane. He would later take to motorists and hitchhikers and tear them apart with his bare hands to feed the remains to his dogs. After several of these murders, he was arrested. A SWAT team showed up and shot and killed him after he killed 3 officers. So these are the 12 ghosts that we meet throughout the movie. Out of all these ghosts, the more vicious ones are the Juggernaut, the Jackal, and the Hammer. Pretty much the Angry Princess as well. She's kind of a wild child. But yeah, so we see this family go into this, house of hell and pretty much get ravaged by these ghosts. I forgot how the deaths were in this movie. So not randomly, the lawyer that brings them to the house, he's getting chased by the Angry Princess, and he gets pushed into this corridor where the doors just shut. And apparently these doors are so sharp that they cut him in half. That is fucking nuts. How did those doors cut him in half? Along with that, we see the actress who comes out in the 90s classic, Matilda. She played the kinder teacher of Matilda. And in this movie, she plays a sort of Greenpeace-esque ghost lover, which is weird. Yeah, in the very beginning, you meet her with what I can only assume is her boyfriend at the time. And they are advocates for ghost rights, something that's completely normal. And the boyfriend ends up getting offed, and we end up seeing her turncoat against the family after she rescues them in the basement. She turncoats on them, and there's a little fun fact in the movie. When you see her gathering up these recordings of spells, one of them says luring spells, I believe, or pulling, I believe. And so that's pretty much the dead giveaway that she's gonna, betray them. But yeah, so the way that she dies is, well, we come to find out that Cyrus did not die. The uncle who left the house to our main character, played by Tony Shalhoub. And he's actually alive. And he's actually, I think, hooking up with her. And so she gives him the Book of Spells. And when she gives him the Book of Spells, she's following him through this corridor where it just starts shutting on her. And then she basically just gets flattened against the wall. And you see it too. Not completely, but you see like her head smush. And you're just like, ooh, that's nasty. But yeah, her death was pretty grimsly. The other death is Matthew Lillard. His death is pretty sad, mostly because he finally becomes good because he helps Cyrus capture all these ghosts, and so he kind of sacrifices himself to save Tony Shalhoub's character. He puts Tony Shalhoub against the wall to barricade him from the ghosts, and he ends up getting killed by the person who was a blacksmith and the Juggernaut. The person who was a blacksmith gets him with a hammer, knocks him out, then the Juggernaut picks him up and slams him against the wall and pretty much murders him. And it's kind of sad to see because, you actually feel for Matthew Lillard because you actually start to like his character. And it's nice at the end when you see him come back as a ghost. And he basically, coaches Tony Shalhoub to save his kids. But along with that, the movie itself, man, it's such a cheesy movie, but a good kind of cheese. The best kind. Which, and there's no bad kind of cheese, I guess. But this movie is just a nice little throwback to, those 2000s weird movies where it's just okay, this is a horror movie, fuck it, don't look too much into it. And when you look at it like that, when you look at it in that point of view, you really do sit back and enjoy the movie, because this movie does have some pretty good genuine scares, like when the jackal attacks Shannon Elizabeth's character. That one's a pretty good scare, along with the angry princess stalking Shannon Elizabeth at one point. Man, it really took me back to when I was a kid and I saw this movie for the first time, and I was just like, holy shit, I remember being absolutely terrified of this, and looking back at it now, I'm just like, it's more just seeing a old family movie, if that makes any sense in any context. I just see it as, man, this was such a good movie for its time, and it will always have that special place in my heart, because I'm a very affectionate person. Just kidding, throwing that out there. For people that know me, they know that is not the case, and I'm extremely sarcastic. But yeah, back to the movie. So if I had to rate this movie, I'd probably give it, since it's a horror movie, I kind of rate those differently. Don't rate it like you're rating an Oscar movie. If in pure horror movie standards, I'm probably rating this 4 out of 5, which is pretty good. I'd recommend it to anybody who likes horror movies and wants to see a pretty good horror movie. And I'm trying to think back in this movie. As far as the kills go, the kills are fun. They're awesome to see, especially in the opening scene where you see all the henchmen for Cyrus get murked when they're trying to capture the Juggernaut. That's always nice to see when your employer just sacrifices you. But yeah, as far as kills goes, they're fun. I mean, if you're going to a horror movie, you're going for A, scares, and B, see some people get murdered. And as far as people getting murdered, it's pretty good. And speaking of the beginning, there was one scene in particular that I just remembered. So the beginning opens up with that whole America family deal where it's like a big happy family, big yard, and it's showing Shannon Elizabeth and her little brother playing. And it's funny because I'm looking back on it and I'm just like, man, how they made fucking Shannon Elizabeth look normal in that scene is baffling to me. And also, there's a point to this. After that scene, when they're living in the apartment after the fire, and the lawyer comes to tell them that they have got this house from the uncle. When the lawyer opens up the laptop, in the fucking laptop, in the background, you clearly see some sort of demonic symbol behind in the screensaver. Like it's there, 100%. And you see like a monster heads, which one can only now assume is like figures of ghosts, just fucking there in the screensaver, and no one bothers to notice. When I saw that, when I rewatched that this time, I was just like, wait a minute, is no one gonna notice this? Is everyone too busy focusing on getting a new house that they're just like, nah, cause demon stuff ain't nothing. Nah, it's alright, it's fine. But yeah, I mean, it's funny the things you'll catch on these rewatches, especially of like these type of horror movies where they're not the greatest in story, like they're not the most solid, but they're fun. It is funny to like go back and see where like they had these little things hidden. But yeah, I would say like that I wanted to focus on more when you rewatch this movie. If you have seen it before, I suggest rewatching it and picking out the fun nuances about these movies. But yeah, that's it. That is it for my podcast today, people. You know what it is. It is the end. So please like, share, subscribe. Our link tree is going to be below. It's going to take you to our website, our Spotify, iTunes, Google, and our Facebook page. So please follow us, give us a like, share us with your friends, your grandma. She's a good lady. She deserves it. And we'll keep it coming. Every Wednesday, you get my Wednesday Rewind, and every Saturday, you get the Rollback Podcast. So, just expect for those podcasts rolling in. Like I said, I'm Fernando. This is your Wednesday Rewind. And cut it.